Okay, so hi everybody, it's Stephen here, and welcome to Now and Men and what is our Christmas special episode. Hi Sandy.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Stephen. With it being Christmas and all, we thought we'd like to focus on the gendering of toys and presents that we buy for children. In other words, how some of them are promoted directly or more likely indirectly as being only suitable for girls and others only suitable for boys, and what the impact of that might be. So for that reason, we're speaking today to Olivia Dickinson. Hello, Olivia.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. So Olivia is part of the Let Toys Be Toys campaign in the UK, which does a lot of brilliant work around challenging gender stereotypes in childhood. And she's got 20 years of experience of working in children's media as well, across CBeebies, CBBC, Discovery Education, Nickelodeon, Nick Jr. and Sky Kids.
Sky Kids, yeah.
Olivia also provides training for school staff and trainee teachers, as well as consulting for children's TV and digital companies on equality issues. And she's a member of the executive group responsible for diversity and inclusion at the Children's Media Foundation. So thanks for coming on the show, Olivia. Maybe you can start off by telling us why gender stereotypes are something which are important to think about in relation to the toys children play with, perhaps especially at this time of year when some of us are buying a lot of toys and presents. So what impacts do these stereotypes have? I mean, what's harmful about a children's toy, for goodness sake?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's a question that the campaign gets asked. There's nothing harmful about any toy, if it's a good toy for a child. What's harmful is when children aren't being given the opportunities to play with a range of toys. So what we've looked at often during the campaign is how boys are restricted from playing with, say, caring or nurturing or domestic toys, and girls are restricted from playing with, say, construction toys or ones that might help with spatial ability. And obviously they're not restricted from that, but there might be ways that the toys are being marketed or packaged or sold, or even just that sort of peer pressure of what feels appropriate. And that's where the connection between gender stereotypes and harm comes in.
Right. And do you want to say a little bit more about boys specifically? Perhaps you could give examples of how toys that we give boys might be shaped by and perhaps in turn shape constructions of masculinity and what impact that has on boys.
Yes, so there's often the classic of, boys aren't given dolls to play with, or toy buggies, and or sort of slings, that you might put your teddy in. All of those caring things means they're missing out on certain role play experiences, and that is often connected to language development as well. But you're right, from a bigger perspective around sort of ongoing masculinity, it's sort of telling them that there are certain areas they're not supposed to care about. The other area that we've noticed, particularly we've just done some research actually about TV ads for toys, is that a lot of although ads have improved in that now boys and girls are shown playing together a lot more, the ones that show only girls are often to do with appearance and sort of domesticity. And again, we're just thinking there's a sort of unequal footing here for girls and boys with certain things that are off limits for boys.
Right. And I think I noticed in the research also there was a message about boys not going anywhere near pink things. Basically.
Exactly. So although, I mean, it's a classic that I think we've noticed for a long time. It's okay for girls to be open to doing boys things, but often the big one is that boys are not supposed to be into girl things. And actually that came out a couple of months ago from the research from Lego. I don't know if you saw that, where they did a really big study, which we were very impressed with, where I think it was something like 71% of boys had got the message that they should be ashamed of playing with what's deemed girly or girl toys. And that's a massive message that's coming through to them. And that's still carrying on, in late 2021.
Sure. But do you think those the influence of those stereotypes continues, as boys and girls get older? I mean, are they influential in the long term?
I think they can be. I think it can depend, because we've often seen there's a sort of peak between sort of 4 and 7 where boys and girls particularly are very bothered. They're trying to figure out who they are, and they're thinking about what they're supposed to play with. And I think it does ease off a little bit in the later primary years. But I think the long-term thing is that they've been given that message early on that certain things aren't for them, and that will have an effect on, the fact that there's what is it, only 11% of nurses are men and that sort of thing. So yeah, and I think it's something awful that in the early years, only 3% of the whole workforce are men. So yeah, it has a really big impact later.
Right. And do you think it's possible that boys or girls can resist those influences as well? I'm thinking of my own experience here, where I wasn't particularly rebellious, but I well remember thinking my action man didn't have anything to wear at night. He needed some pajamas, and well, maybe that's why I'm hosting this show. Who knows? But but the question stands: do children resist the influences of
Yeah,
these
no,
stereotypes,
they do,
and how
and
does that work?
They do resist. I think the saddest thing that we find is where a child has happily carried on not sort of knowing there are these sort of stereotypes and restrictions, and then either they start to learn to read and they see some signs and they might see some packaging that says something about boys or girls, or they even just see pictures or adverts that are giving them that. Or that they start to sort of learn from their peers. And again, those peers, there's no fault. They're just learning from society or even their own parents, or again from advertising. So I think they can resist, but it can really depend on the character of the child and getting the support from their family. That of course it's fine to do that. So an example I always have is, so my son is now late primary, but we've never restricted. He reads an incredible amount, and he just reads and reads and reads. And I'd never think of that classic sort of boys don't read about girls, and he wouldn't even consider it. But again, it's I do know of other parents where they're tending to give non-fiction or finding adventure stories, and you're thinking, but why? What's wrong about the narrative of girls that boys can't read about it? So again, it's about expectation, and not even sort of saying things are off limits, I suppose.
Because that is an issue in and of itself, isn't it? As you say, that actually boys often don't read as much as girls, perhaps especially like fiction. Yeah, I mean, do you think that's something to think about here as well?
Yeah, I mean, so we have a campaign called Let Books Be Books that originally started, that was more about the covers of books and what they were saying. So there are some classic books out there that thankfully are no longer in print. So gorgeous colouring for girls and baking for boys. And the food ones have always entertained us, that children have to cook and eat different food. But again, it's giving a message of different things for different kids. But no, the reading is an interesting one, because there are a lot of these myths of boys don't read about girls, or boys don't like reading. And the problem you've got is that at a certain age they might actually pick up on that and think they need to conform to that expectation. And if they've never actually heard of that expectation, they're going to carry on. I think there's some good research out there about sort of literacy among boys, and I think it does tend to say that if a child has started reading quite early on and is a sort of free reader, there isn't a massive difference in what boys and girls are reading. It's the reluctant readers, that can be both girls and boys, where it becomes more of an issue with boys, because they might start being fed books that they're supposed to like, and then they get put off even more.
Yeah. And would you say that this is something which has got worse over time, or got better over time, in terms of gender stereotypes and what children are learning about them? So I mean, for example, if you think about the kind of message that boys often get nowadays about that a real man should be big and strong and muscular, and there's research, isn't there, about things like GI Joe, and how like his biceps and chest have like grown disproportionately since like the 1960s and 70s to today. So yeah, what do you think this tells us about the kind of culture?
Yeah, I think it depends what sort of how many decades you're looking at. So one thing we always cite is the work of Elizabeth Sweet, that has shown that that divide in pink and blue really, really grew in the 1990s. And so lots of us from the campaign grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we didn't experience that divide ourselves. We didn't feel toys were gendered in that way. And then we're very much aware that people who are becoming parents now have only grown up with that divide. So they may have been kids in the 90s and into the I don't know, what do we call them, zeros, and so I don't know. There's a little bit of ebb and flow, in that there may have been a peak when it was really bad, because of our campaign, 15 shops, which is most of them, because it covers places like Tesco and John Lewis, no longer have girls and boys signs in the separate aisles for toys. And we have seen a lot of promising better packaging. So recently there's been some from Tesco. There are others if you look on our Twitter feed. So I don't know, it's tricky, because on the one hand, we think there have been improvements because we've been reviewing it now for nearly 10 years. But on the other, I think when you're a new parent, you're suddenly bombarded with pink and blue, and you can't believe this is what your child is in. Yeah.
Yeah, and how difficult that is to resist, I suppose, if you've only got a certain amount of options, and if all the other kids are playing with
Exactly.
certain
And
toys.
I think the certain amount of options is a really good one, thinking about Christmas shopping, because,
Mm,
if actually you have to do it online, or you can only go to the big supermarket, or, you don't have much money and you're restricted in terms of how much choice you've got, that there will be certain toys that you think, are these only conforming to stereotypes? So we have a scheme called Toy Mark, where we award independent retailers who who stock and then can make people shop sort of outside those gender stereotypes. So they have to meet certain requirements around challenging stereotypes and not showing certain restrictions. And also we look at other diversity, what other books are they stocking, what other toys and dolls, and how do they mix them up. So obviously our best approach is, you mix by the type of toy, not by who it's supposedly for. So yeah.
No, that's fantastic, and I wanted to ask you about that, and actually, because I know you've achieved some fantastic things, haven't you, in the time of the campaign? So yeah, could you just say a little bit more about that, about some of the things which you do as the Let Toys Be Toys
Yeah.
campaign, and some of the things you've achieved which you're kind of proud of?
Yeah, so the campaign started in 2012, around this time of year, actually. So it was sort of November time. I wasn't involved then, but again, it was parents on Mumsnet getting really fed up with the gendering of toys on their Christmas lists for their kids and in the shops. And since then, 15 retailers have committed to taking down the boys and girls signs. Occasionally, they pop up again, and actually we tend to get a very good response. So for example, TK Maxx suddenly puts them back in, and they immediately said, oh no, we'll take them back down again. So it's sort of shop by shop, if head office hasn't communicated it. Sadly, some of those shops that committed all that time ago are now no longer, Toys R Us and Debenhams aren't sort of on our high streets anymore. And then we've also had 11 publishers commit to let books be books. So again, that is allowing, so they're removing books that have labels saying for boys or for girls. Obviously, we get contacted a lot on social media as more about packaging. So the colours that might be used in packaging or on the cover of a book, and saying is this explicitly saying this is for girls or boys? It might not have the label, but the colours are obviously giving a message. And then we've tried to do different bits of research across the years. So the research we've just done into TV advertising, we've tried to repeat what we did in 2015, because we were aware that the media landscape has changed dramatically since 2015. COVID's obviously sped that up, but kids aren't watching linear channels and seeing as many adverts, but they're going to be seeing adverts on YouTube. They're still being bombarded with ads for toys. And so we've been quite impressed actually with the research that we have just finished, in that there are more examples of boys and girls playing together, and girls particularly seem to be faring a bit better. But as we said at the beginning, the boys are being restricted. I'm trying to think what else we've covered. I mean, we've sort of dipped in and out of doing some training, but we are all volunteers, and it depends how we can fit it in around our day jobs. We were part of the Fawcett Society, I've forgotten what they called it, but the Unlimited
I think
Potential
was it the Commission on Gender
Yes,
Stereotypes?
thank you, Commission. That was the word I was thinking. What's it called? The Commission on Gender Stereotypes in Early Childhood, and they did a really thorough job with a lot of stakeholders and a lot of consultants, and they're still working through some of those recommendations. And in fact, Fawcett themselves have just published something with Leon, so to do with advertising. So they've published something again, recommendations for advertising. There's been a change actually from the ASA in how gender stereotypes are portrayed in advertising. We find it interesting. The only ads that have so far been sort of asked to be taken down are ones aimed at grown-ups. So we'd quite like to see, whether there's scope for any ads that are aimed at children to be looked at from an ASA perspective as well.
I was just wondering about like what role do companies like toy manufacturers have to play here? I mean, are they kind of a big part of the problem? Are they actually profiting often from like entrenching these gender stereotypes? Or
I don't. It's a tricky one. We have worked with a few, which we sort of don't. That's sort of kept confidential. But it's always been tricky in that we can't get out of them how profitable it is to have that divide. Once the signs came down in shops, there didn't seem to be a massive change in how shoppers were shopping or the profits that were coming in. So in that sense, we're not sure it's benefiting them. What we are aware of, and that we still sort of struggle with how to unpick, is how sort of embedded it is. So, a big supermarket or a big department store will have girl buyers and toy and boy buyers, and almost from the very beginning, when you're starting to license, say, a TV show into toys, they're starting to think about it from a boy perspective and a girl perspective. So they're not necessarily thinking about, okay, what sort of product can this be? But they're thinking about who the consumer or who the audience is. And I think there's a lot of unpicking there that some of the companies are committed to, but it's got such a long lead time that you almost need to start talking very early on. And then I think it's also that, they will say, well, people buy this stuff, and obviously sometimes our perspective on that is, well, they buy it because there isn't anything else, and if that's the character or the thing that the child really likes, then that's what they're going to go for. But a good example we always talk about is Paw Patrol, which is still a very popular preschool show.
Yes, my niece watches that all the time.
And it only has two female characters, only one regular female character, Sky. And what tends to happen is all the Sky merchandise is, well, she's got pink on her, and it's all coloured pink, and there'll be girl pajamas and that sort of thing. And we know plenty of boys who love Sky, and then also plenty of girls who love the boy character as well. And there doesn't seem to be that recognition. And then sometimes what happens is the girl characters get missed off. So we've got missing girls off pajamas. Say the pajamas only feature all the boy pups, not the girl. And the same thing will happen with some of the other big things like PJ Masks and Go Jetters, that sort of thing, where there's a minority of female characters. And again, I think, we might be able to anecdotally say, or have plenty of people on social media say, my boy likes, the pink stuff, or really loves Sky. And yet that message doesn't always come through to, say, the retailers or the manufacturers.
Yeah, and it feels like that kind of implicitness as well, that maybe they could say like, oh well, we're not explicitly targeting this at girls or boys, but I feel like that often the kind of subliminal, like as you say, like the colors, like if something is clearly in pink and these colors, which for some reason we now associate with femininity or whatever, like that will still have that effect, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it starts to be a learned thing. So like I said, we used to get a lot of people on social media saying, oh, my child's just started nursery or just started reception or went to a party and is suddenly being told what is a girl colour and a boy colour. And again, that's, in good nurseries and good early years settings, everyone's pushing back on that. And we have our 10 ways to challenge gender stereotypes in early years in schools. And one of those is saying things like, oh, my dad loves pink, or, if you're a woman, or and if you're a man, saying, oh, I do the cooking, just giving those little examples because they, kids start to imagine, they see one thing at home or they're told one thing at school, and they that's all it can experience. So that's what they think is true, which is fair enough because they're only 4. And it's just having that opportunity to challenge it a little bit.
No, and I think it's like when we're from a very young age, like kids absorb so much, don't they? And I think perhaps it's easy to forget that, like how much kids are taking in from the world around them, and so therefore they're going to be processing these kind of messages that we are giving them, either deliberately or unintentionally. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
I remember, so Dr. Carrie Peekser, who's done research in this area, and I remember her example was great in that she said, if only mum drinks coffee and you're a small child, you think only women drink coffee. You just don't get, dad doesn't drink coffee, so men don't drink coffee, because that's their sphere of experience. And obviously that changes as they realise that, coffee isn't just for women, but it's that sort of thing. So
Yes. So clearly there are some good examples, I suppose, of how some companies are starting to
yeah.
think differently about this. I mean, there's also kind of Lego, for example, isn't there? Who, perhaps they've been criticised quite a bit over the years, but they did recently launch the first set of kind of LGBTQI figures, for example. So perhaps it seems like there is some progress going on.
Yeah, I mean, after this research that I mentioned, they say they've made a commitment to really sort of removing gender stereotypes completely. Their website now doesn't have any boy-girl divisions, and obviously we've always pushed that their Lego should be all grouped together, but we still see Lego Friends might be put in a different place from Lego City. Then there's Lego Harry Potter. There's so many different sort of ranges. I haven't been to a physical Lego shop recently to sort of check it out. If anyone wants to do that, we'd love to know. Yeah, so I think it's also just, like you say, it's the sort of proof of what we actually see, what will end up on the shelves, how will it be packaged, how will it be marketed. They tried with Lego Friends, they've introduced quite a few boy characters into that range, but again, everyone when it launched said, "Oh, it's the girl range," and yet, it's supposedly because they hadn't marketed enough to girls in the past. So you're sort of, shooting themselves in the foot slightly.
Yeah. I was interested in what you said a minute ago about, seeing perhaps your mum drinking coffee and therefore, that's what you would do. I mean, you wouldn't know this, but one of my other roles, I've been a chess coach. And so coaching chess in schools. And there you see chess being taken up by boys, often almost exclusively if it's as an after school activity. There's nothing intrinsically male about chess
No,
itself. I mean, in
no.
fact, it has this sort of powerful figure of the queen, so you could say, well,
That's
that might be an
true.
attraction to girls. So I have come back to thinking, well, if you see your dad playing chess, or chess is perceived to be a male activity, then that follows, and it's
And
incredibly
also,
hard to turn that round and establish a sort of bridgehead of girls who, even though when they do play, they're great at it. So
exactly. And I think also with a club, as an example, at a school, is it's that peer pressure again of, do I really want to go if I'm going to be the only girl? Because they will notice that. They'll sort of check. I've still remember times when my son has said, "Are there any boys going?" Something else. He's bothered, and I'll say, "But all the girls." But it's just not. Again, it's how they've been socialized of who they play with and who their friends are and that sort of thing. The chess, I think, is a really good example. I think the Queen's Gambit, that program on Netflix, I think has increased girls' interest, which is good. But you're right, there's no reason, but it's sort of become a tradition that it should be for boys.
Well, the other thing that's interesting, I think, from a gendered point of view, is that chess gives boys who are not into some of the sort of dominant discourses of football and sport and so on, they can shine at these things as well. And so I think that's quite interesting too, from a gendered point of view.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, does it still become a boy dominant space?
True.
True. So it is tricky.
Anyway, I won't go on about chess too much, but I just couldn't help but mention it.
But I do think the other thing I've noticed in schools that I've been looking at recently, and again, this is purely incidental, is if you look down the instruments that children are learning. So piano seems to be across everything, but you'll see that the drums and the brass is starting to be dominated by boys, and the strings and the flute and the wind. And it was just because I've looked at sort of timetables of when kids are doing it and thought, hang on, why are all the girls playing the flute and things? And obviously, again, we all know, I do know a girl that plays a brass instrument, those sorts of things, and a girl that plays drums, and but I don't actually currently know a boy that plays the flute or the clarinet. It's those sorts of things that, and those are the little things. So in our 10 ways, we haven't included that specifically, but it's looking at those tiny things in nurseries and schools to say, just unpick it slightly and think, hang on, why is that dominated by boys or girls?
And is this through, I know you've been involved with an organisation called Lifting Limits in the
Mm-hmm.
past, and they do work around these areas in primary schools and helping them to tackle gender stereotypes. I wondered if you could say a bit more about their work,
Yeah,
because
sure.
it sounds very important.
It is very important. So the 10 ways I was talking about are actually inspired originally from some work the NEU did, that used to be the NUT, the Teaching Union. But Lifting Limits has then done incredibly thorough work. So they have a whole year-long program that a school needs to sign up for. They did they did a year-long pilot with 5 schools in one part of London. And then it's grown since then. So I was part of Lifting Limits a couple of years ago, actually, not even a couple. It was during COVID time. So what they do is they take what's called a whole school approach. And this is something that's been very much advocated by the Institute of Physics for secondary schools. And then it's never been done for primary schools. And so Karen from Lifting Limits has created this whole model that works from nursery upwards in primary schools, where you're again looking at everything. So you'll be starting from sort of the ground up in terms of training for everyone, not just teachers. So thinking about all the staff, so the lunchtime staff, the front of reception staff, the people in the playground, the PE staff that only come in once a week. So thinking about training in that sense of we've all got the same ethos. About being anti-sexist, basically. And then from that, it's sort of instilling how to challenge gender stereotypes and starting to give confidence to both boys and girls in terms of actually questioning some of those role models. So you can look on the Lifting Limits website. They've got the final report of the pilot that then shows the results. And there's some quite remarkable things in there in terms of how the boys start to, I think there was one done about sort of career aspirations, and it sort of flipped from boys realizing they could be teachers and nurses and girls being footballers and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's had a huge impact. But the problem is because it's quite intense and each school has to sign up, it's only at a few schools but growing, and it would be great to get it out there.
So if there are any teachers listening, maybe they should have a look on the Lifting Limits
website. They should definitely have a look. And then, I mean, in that sense, you sort of then got some guidance, but there's other stuff out there. So like I said, there's Gender Action from the Institute of Physics. We've put stuff up on Let Toys Be Toys. But again, it's worth getting in touch with either Lifting Limits or Let Toys Be Toys and just saying, this is the direction we want to go in, and where do we start? And again, the other thing, actually, that's a good way to do it over Christmas, is watch the No More Boys and Girls documentary. So I'm sure both of you have seen that. Have you seen that with Graham Andre, his 2-parter? So he was a year 3 teacher who sort of had intervention for 6 weeks on how to challenge gender stereotypes. And I actually, when it was repeated, I watched it with my son, who was then year 3. So it was actually a really good experience, because he could say, for half of it, he said, well, we don't do that. And I was like, oh, good, I'm glad your school, isn't doing certain things. But on the other hand, he could also see why, certain things weren't liked by the girls and the boys. But the key thing we often talk about with that program is just how remarkable the change was in the confidence of the girls, the self-esteem of the girls, and then what they called the observed bad behaviour of the boys went down by 57%, which, those sorts of interventions are the sorts of things that people are always tearing their hair about, how are we going to manage with those few naughty boys? And actually, look, this is how you can do it. So, yeah, it's on YouTube. I'm not supposed to say that because, but it's no longer on iPlayer, but it is on YouTube. So just search No More Boys and Girls.
It feels like schools have such an important role to play here, doesn't it? Like, I mean, just going back to what you were saying about like music. Like, I remember, when I was at school, I was getting into like rock and metal music and like playing bass guitar and stuff. And I just remember as well that like actually we had a music block, which wasn't particularly huge or anything, but yeah, already from quite an early age that was becoming quite dominated by boys, and it was probably quite hard for girls to actually access that, especially to play those kind of rock instruments. And obviously it is a genre of music which is very popular, but which is still very male dominated. So it just shows, doesn't it, I suppose, how from an early age, these patterns can develop. And actually, yeah, like what, for example, could schools do to like open up those kind of spaces more to everyone?
I mean, thinking back, actually, guitar, I'd say, is a bit like piano. That seems to be quite a range at the moment in primary for girls and boys. What Lifting Limits have done for music is they have lists of composers across history who are female, because again, that's something which we'd say when you're teaching music. So maybe it's just your once a week class music. Are you focusing mostly on either traditional male composers, so the Beethovens and the Mozarts and things, but even more modern stuff? So when they come back and say, "Oh, we've been doing Take That," or I'm trying to think, I don't know, someone else more modern. That's not very modern. You're saying, well, how about some Adele or some Madonna? It's just trying to get that mix in there so that they're not, again, seeing it's only men who are taking the lead. Yeah.
And we always like to ask on Now and Men about the kind of personal side of doing this work as well. And so may I ask like how you first got involved in work around tackling gender stereotypes? I mean, and do you think there are any kind of factors in particular which may have led to that?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture. So I do have a son, but even before I had him, and I didn't know he was a boy till I had him, I was one of those parents who didn't find out. I was always very bothered that feminism should be for boys and girls, or for men and women, I suppose. And it would always frustrate me when I'd read articles or listen to the radio or whatever, and there'd be talk about only women should be sort of fighting this. And I think, well, no, because if we don't include half the population, we're not really going to achieve equality, are we? So then with Let Toys Be Toys itself, it started in 2012. And as I've admitted before, when it started, I remember thinking it wouldn't work because I was working at Nickelodeon at the time, which, so that's a TV channel and then has Nick Jr. as well. And obviously they do an awful lot of merchandising and licensing of shows like Paw Patrol. And so I knew, even though I've always worked on the digital side, but I knew, things took 5 years to get to the shelves. So when Let Toys Be Toys were saying, we're going to talk about signs on shelves, and I was thinking, no, you need to start like 3 years before, when there's this idea for a TV show that's already made half of, and they've decided the characters and they've dressed them up and they've decided those colors. And so I'm afraid, but the success of the campaign has been that the consumer doesn't know all of that inside stuff of the sort of long lead times for licensing or how everything's working. And the reason it worked is because what they saw was what they wanted to challenge, and so the signs worked. But because I was at Nickelodeon, I didn't feel I could join the campaign, so I went freelance and I joined later in 2014, 2015 time. And then I sort of dipped in and out. We're all volunteers, so we sort of do what we can when we can. And obviously in that time, our children have got older, social media has evolved, things have kept moving on. And then because I was involved in that, I can't really remember the connection, but I met Karen, who now runs Lifting Limits, so she invited me to join that. And then because of the connections Let Toys Be Toys had made, which was some really good ones, we were always so pleased that we sort of got invited into things, which was positive. We were always trying to make it, can we make positive change? I think, things like with the NUT, with Institute of Physics, Gender Action had funding from the Mayor of London, those sorts of things meant that those connections sort of meant we joined the dots, I think, and we thought about, okay, it's not just about the toys on the shelves, it's about the whole experience of childhood that's really important.
And like, how would you say it impacts on you kind of personally to do this work? Like, I mean, because for example, do you find yourself like, I feel like once you start learning about this stuff and once you have your eyes open to it, it's very hard to like unsee it, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you start realizing that these gender norms and stereotypes are everywhere, and
Totally.
and it's very hard to live outside of that world. So like, how do you kind of persevere?
No, I think that's a really, really good question. So the phrase at Lifting Limits that they use is a gender lens. So yes, you apply a gender lens to everything, and suddenly, you as you say, you start to think, oh God, I'm just seeing them everywhere. But so I mean, the thing is, I think I was already applying that gender lens just because I was bothered about sort of sexism and that sort of thing from an early age. I think It is a tricky one, because sometimes the other thing we have to always remember is where everyone is on their journey. So sometimes we will get people tweeting things, and I'll think, oh yeah, we've seen that a million times. There's still stuff out there that's in some toy shops, or that just, Asda, for example, hasn't budged at all. Certain things that we'll see, and we'll think. And the thing is, you have to sort of what's the word? Sort of reignite that sort of remembrance of having a 2-year-old, or seeing it for the first time, going, yes, it's terrible, let's try and change it. Whereas I think as a campaign has matured, maybe we've started to sort of think, okay, which battles, can we pick, sort of thing. And I know for myself, sometimes we each have to take a step back from social media or from the campaign, just to have that break, definitely. But I suppose the other way I've managed it is, as I've learnt more and I suppose matured in my own career, I felt more able to challenge things in the work I do as well. So as you said, I've started to do audits and seminars and things from a sort of media perspective, and I think that just gives you a little bit more sense of, can I make some sort of other change in that way? Because it's often just about talking, it's just pointing stuff out often. So we had a tweet recently, so from Tesco have just done some absolutely brilliant packaging, and you think, okay, so there've been some great conversations going on at Tesco, and it would be good to know what those conversations were. And we really hope that, just there's a sort of groundswell of enough people noticing or having their own kids, that you start to see those changes in packaging. And it's those sorts of things where you think, okay, there has been a change. But yeah, occasionally you think, hang on, how has this been going on for 10 years? And we're still being tweeted things. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I was wondering about, Olivia, is how does this potentially contribute in terms of like environmental damage? Because obviously, are we producing, more and more toys, in a gendered way, which is actually just creating, more and more stuff, which actually we don't necessarily need. Yeah, I mean, is that something to think about as well in relation to
Yeah,
gender stereotypes?
I think it is. I think it's a really good point, because we have sometimes wondered if, trying to market things separately to boys and girls means, if have a boy and a girl, or 2 boys and a girl, you're feeling you have to buy different toys for them and you can't do hand-me-downs. And it's the same with clothes. I think that's had a massive effect in the market as well. So I think that is, yes, it's obviously sort of classic capitalism of trying to produce more stuff. So one thing we looked at, I think, a couple of years ago was that green impact, and how could you reuse toys. And particularly when the kids are young and they grow out of stuff quite quickly, charity shops are obviously a brilliant place to get stuff. And the last time I was in a few charity shops, they're not dividing by girl and boy, so that's a good one to look at. And then also, but it's just thinking about, well, if my older boy like this, why can't my younger girl like the same thing? And then it's giving those range of play experiences that we always think are really important, because otherwise you might end up with only one type of play. And yeah, so no, it definitely has an impact. Sort of climate change. And should you be always buying new stuff, or could you think about passing things down? Yeah.
Because there's also another campaign, isn't there? Let clothes be clothes, and it feels like that's another thing as well, isn't it? About obviously children's clothes are so rigidly gendered
Yes.
often,
Yeah.
and again, that's potentially, you don't need to have all these different clothes with.
No, and it's interesting because a few shops have actually. I think M&S and John Lewis have said that they've stopped labelling them as girls and boys, but then if you go in, you see. So I think it was in M&S, the pajamas. They label them as kids, but they've got one side pink and the other side is, I don't know, vehicles. So no, yeah, the clothes is important as well. I think, I don't know, the thing with clothes is, obviously as the kids get older, it might become more
Yes.
important. But then again, have a look on Twitter, because there are threads about how different the fit is. And it is something I've noticed as a mother of a son, in that I don't normally have to notice it. I just have to go, oh, the colours are really boring. Once he was past 4, he wasn't allowed to wear any bright colours, or, that sort of thing. But the other thing I've noticed is, so he really likes Harry Potter. and a lot of the Harry Potter clothes, they're not necessarily labelled as girls, but they're sort of in the girl bit. And so the tops or the sweatshirts are that bit shorter or that bit tighter, and so you need to buy the next size up. And it's those sorts of things that, and I have had my eyes opened from mums of girls of how frustrating it is that from quite a young age, what the girls are being sold feels inappropriate for, you know, they just want to run around, and it's restricting their play. And again, maybe that is where charity shops can come in, but I mean, the thing with charity shops is they have such constant churn. They'll still be stocking quite recent stuff, you know, that kids have grown out of. So,
But just going back to the green theme that you were
mm,
mentioning there, I remember from my childhood, you know, playing with cars endlessly,
mm,
and
mm,
boys did. I mean, girls did to an extent too, but
mm.
mainly boys. And I'm thinking, God, is that still going on? Because that's, you know, we're dominated by a car culture still, and it's a real
Yeah.
big problem in terms of
That's
the
a really good
environment.
point, actually, isn't it? Because there's sort of vehicles. So the thing we looked at with the toy advertising is that a lot of the ads for vehicles, so toy vehicles, so whether it's a train set or a car or, you know, remote control cars are
Mm,
often marketed to boys. We have found that they are now including girls much more than they used to. But you're right, there's a real thing around, yeah, why are cars such a popular thing?
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
no, that's a good point.
We need little toy bicycles more
Well,
central.
yeah.
Well, or you can have train sets. Trains are still
Absolutely.
quite popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you get into aeroplanes and yeah, because like Playmobil have some wonderful, you know, vehicles. But yeah.
Mm.
Mm.
Yeah, and do you have any like advice that you would give to parents or other adults, you know, like myself, I'm an uncle, you know, or grandparents, you know, who want to help make sure that, you know, their children aren't going to be kind of unduly influenced or kind of held back by the kinds of gender stereotypes we've been talking about?
I think the main thing, I mean, the thing we always say, if you're a sort of gift buyer, gift giver, I don't know, or a benevolent uncle, is to really find out what the child wants and is
Mm,
interested in. Because again, you will hear. So I was in a bookshop actually the other day, and I heard a man say to the shop assistant, "I need a book for a 15-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. You know,
mm,
find them now," sort of
mm,
thing. And I was sort of peering because I was with my son and he was in a different bit, and I was sort of trying to work out what they were going for. And actually, I thought the shop assistant did a very good job of just finding sort of the teen, young adult stuff at the moment. But it's that sort of thing that limits, because you're saying that the key reason that you're looking for something is entirely to do with what your sex is, and it's like, well, that's
mm,
not. It's what you're interested in. You know, it's like, you know, you might be really into Harry Potter, but you might also like something else, and it's nothing to do with, you know, uh, you shouldn't be. It's putting you in a box, isn't it, by saying
mm,
you like certain things. And then I suppose the other thing is giving the child confidence to like the things that sometimes society says they're not supposed to like. And obviously, there are ways, you know, if it's something that might feel a bit young, or, you know, you can still be giving them something and sort of, I suppose, encouraging them to still enjoy whatever it is they like, and make sure they're not, you know, the classic from the Lego, not ashamed to say they like certain things. Uh,
mm.
yeah.
I wonder if there's something there about like you know, how much of a kind of consumerist society we live in as well, that
Mm.
like buying gifts and presents and toys and stuff is seen as being like a way of like showing love to someone, and not just like a gift, but like, you know, a quantity of gifts. You know, and it's like, well, wouldn't it actually, the most meaningful thing is to have a close relationship with somebody where you show your love and affection, you know, just through that relationship, you know, rather than through, and from there, then hopefully you would have a better understanding as well about what kind of things do they actually want, rather than what society is actually just telling them.
Exactly, it's knowing who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll often have examples where, um, you know, well-meaning relatives have given presents, and the family will say, well, it was sort of the wrong way round for the girl and the boy, really. You know, they thought the girl might like this and the boy might like that, and really they'd quite like to swap, you know. And again, that's where they just, you know, they don't know the child well enough. But equally, that's where it would, you know, even just asking the parent, they'd probably get a bit more sense out of it. But it is also because, I mean, I think the big one people often talk about is sort of when kids are sort of 5 and 6 and they're at all class parties, I suspect there haven't been for the last 2 years because of COVID, but that used to be a really big thing of what do you get the child that your child doesn't even play with, but they've been invited to the party. And that is where I think people do fall into those stereotype tracks. That's where I'd end up buying a book, to be honest. But I think I was a bit, I don't know how popular that was. But so yeah, it can be tricky. But again, that's where we have gift guides that pull in lots of our Toy Mark retailers, and we obviously don't group them by boy and girl. But obviously we talk about, how much do you want to spend? Is it arts and crafts? Is it construction? Is it space? Is it science? Have a look. So there's lots of them. And we always try to cater for different, budgets as well. And I think, again, you'll look at those and go, wow, that's such a cool thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl. So, yeah.
That sounds really helpful, actually. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, they're really good. There's a couple of people who work so hard on them. I don't do them at all. And then when they go live, I go, oh my goodness, that's all my stocking fillers sorted. They're really good. So
yeah, because the other thing I've had said to me quite often is, oh, just get them an Amazon token or something. And you think, and that raises my hackles in a different way. But so to be able to say, yes, there is,
Yes. Well, and again, so some of our Toy Mart retailers are bookshops. So, for example, I don't think my son's going to be listening to this. I bought the Harry Potter origami. And again, I made a point of buying it from the independent bookshop that featured on our website. And then I even emailed them to say, there's 2 other books he'd like. Have you got them? Yes, you have. Great. It's that sort of thing of, we're really bothered about supporting independent retailers and bookshops as well. Yeah.
Your campaign sounds so great. I mean, really great. And I'm just wondering, if there's other things that parents out there could do to support you and your organisation, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've sort of gone around the houses a bit with how big we've been and whether we should have a formal status, and we don't. We've done a little bit of fundraising in the past, and we occasionally need money for, printing and that sort of thing. But again, as there have been no in-person events for a really long time, we reminisce that the last in-person event was the Women of the World at the South Bank, which we used to go to every year. We'd always have a big stall. And we were there in, I think, March 2020. It kept going. And that's always been those sorts of events are really positive in that you have people who haven't heard about you, and maybe they're a grandmother, or maybe they've just had a child, or they're an uncle, and they come up and sort of say, oh, this looks brilliant. And then they usually tell you about Lego Friends. That's usually what happens. Or they tell you about what they've seen in a toy shop recently. And yeah, so I don't know. There's, as you can see, we've tried to do, so we've done the TV ads research. We've been involved with Fawcett. There's different bits and pieces that we try to sort of keep going with. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we try to sort of keep those communications going. And then I think the thing we are all aware of is all of our children are getting older. So we have a couple of sort of newer volunteers who might have younger children, but otherwise the sort of core group, they're all getting into sort of late primary, senior school. And you think, do we need some new blood? I don't know.
I was interested there in what you said about having a stall at Women of the World. Of course, from our point of view, in relation to the podcast, we want to get messages out to men as well. And, one of the issues for men is they don't tend to see gender in the same way.
Yes.
So maybe that's a challenge for the campaign.
Well,
how do you reach male parents?
They had a men's festival. What was it? It's the November
Being a Man.
one. Being a Man. Thank you. We did actually have a stall at that quite a few years ago, though.
Yeah.
It was really poorly attended compared to Women of the World. But we did put out flyers and that sort of thing. But no, you're right. Years ago, we used to talk about whether we should be, if we were doing in-person events, we shouldn't be going to Women of the World. We shouldn't be going to, I'm trying to think what else we've done, sort of other conferences. We should be going to, not to be stereotyped, the football matches or
Mm.
the pub, or those sorts of things of how do we reach the people who think it's not a problem. So I mean, I've spoken at a couple of men's conferences things. There's the Bristol Men in Early Years. I don't know if you're connected
Oh.
with them. They're a brilliant outfit, and they did a conference a few years ago which I spoke at, and again had a mini stall at. And I'm sure there was another men's one. So we have made that connection. But again, they're often events that are already a bit like this, that they're aware of what the issues might be for boys. And we'd love to sort of, should we be going to more sort of sporting things or ideas, please. So yeah.
Well, maybe that's a challenge for some of our listeners to have a think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, we do have, and we've always said we're not all parents and we're not all women. So we do always say that. But again, we are majority mums, and that I think, and sometimes that works in our favour because we can sometimes play it down a little bit, just saying, oh, we're just a group of mums and we're just trying to, make a fuss about this, that, and the other. But on the other hand, we have, other interested parties, and I think that's quite important. So yeah.
Great.
And it feels like that is in terms of what men can do to support gender equality, which is one of the kind of themes of the podcast. It feels like we all encounter these gender stereotypes on a day-to-day basis, don't we? So doing whatever we can to challenge them, and perhaps especially if we are a teacher or if we have children or we have we're an uncle or whatever. But I feel like that is something anyone can do, isn't it? Is in all sorts of different ways, is to challenge those stereotypes.
Exactly, and it is that bit from the very beginning, because something we've all noticed is we always think there should be a Let Cards Be Cards campaign. That pops up. I'm sure you've seen that. So new baby cards, the pink and the blue, or what's it saying about mummy and daddy and that sort of thing. It's all very heteronormative and all of that. And but again, that it tends to be often when parents, both men and women, suddenly notice that they're surrounded by these stereotypes. I mean, that's even from, in hospital, you start getting called mum and you're like, oh, who's mum? Oh, it's me, and the same I've seen, dads going, who's dad? Oh, I'm not dad, so it's those sorts of things. But it's in language, it's in, expectation, and but no, the cards thing. So some of our toy mart retailers, I'm sure, do cards, but again, that's a big one, both for birthday cards and new baby cards.
Yeah, gift cards are, I mean, it's terrible, isn't it? They're so gendered and stereotyped. And like things like Mother's Day as well, or Father's Day. Like all gift cards seem, for men seem to be about like you either like going to the pub or you like football. It's like there's such a narrow idea about what a man is.
No, there's been a few. I remember there was a really awful one I saw, and I did tweet about in the supermarket. I did think get taken down, but I can't remember what it was now. But there are. Yeah, Mother's Day, you're right. When Mother's Day comes round, you almost have to just turn it all off, I think. So.
Yeah, it'll be stuff like, oh, Mum, we're going to give you a day off from like all of the chores in the house because it's Mother's Day. And it's like, God.
I know, yeah.
Well, I mean, unless you had any other questions, Sandy, I think
I don't. No, it's great to spend time with you and to hear you talking about the campaigns that you're involved in.
No, thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
But one thing I would say actually that I think is quite important when we started the campaign is we always cared as much about boys as girls, because often there have been other campaigns that really worry girls being left behind, or girls in science, or sort of status of girls. And we've always made the point that we want equal play for all children. And it's really important because it affects, it has that massive effect on boys, whether it's to do with their emotional development or their language development or what they grow up to be able to do. And then the one we always use is when I was talking about the baby dolls early on is like, well, quite a lot of these men are going to grow up to be dads. So it's probably okay to play with a buggy and, have a baby doll, because that's what they're going to be doing in, 20 or 30 years. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Olivia, for giving us your time, and have a lovely Christmas.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you. Yeah, no, have a really good Christmas with no gendered toys under the Christmas tree.
So what did you think of that, Stephen? Are you going to give up the guitar and take up the flute?
Well, I mean, in all seriousness, it has made me reflect on, everything, how all of these things, music, games, toys, all of these things are, very much influenced by these kinds of stereotypes and expectations around gender. I mean, one thing which I was thinking about, actually, my research is primarily about violence. And I was thinking about how, so often for boys, we give them, what are the toys we give to boys? And so often, actually, there's weapons, which I don't think is the case for girls to some extent. And again, that's how is it marketed? So often it's marketed in a way where it seems to be the boys are the ones who are primarily playing with these kinds of toys, but not just weapons, even like toy guns, toy swords, knives. There's also kind of militarism there as well, right? Like, I mean, you mentioned about G.I. Joe and Action Man and these kinds of things. There's somehow the idea about what is a kind of desirable way of being a man, what's a kind of desirable expression of masculinity that boys are learning about, and often it does seem to be still quite a militaristic, strong, muscular idea there. So I find that quite interesting because like, to what extent might that be normalizing for very young boys already, the idea that they should be able to use violence, they should be prepared to do that, and that is part of masculinity. What did you think?
One of the things that I really like about this whole issue is the accessibility of, getting into talking about gender norms through exploring toys, books, culture, and so on. Because sometimes I feel that, we can talk in quite sort of sociological terms about some of these things, and you can well, I don't know, but we might be losing our audience or some of them. Whereas actually, when you go to a toy shop and look at the shelves and think, blimey, look at this, this is horribly gendered, then that's is very powerful, and it's there, and it's in your face, really. So I like that aspect of it. The other thing that I really thought was interesting was when she mentioned, there should be a Let Cards Be Cards campaign. I mean, yes, when you look at those, again, you go into a shop and you look at the cards and you think, oh God, this is sexist, homophobic, ageist. It's got every ist you want to mention, really. And, it wouldn't be too difficult to set up a parallel campaign like that. Maybe that's one for us, Stephen, at some point.
I think so. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you just go to any card shop or any card section of a supermarket, and it's just remarkable how sharp they're divided into pink and blue. And like for children, what messages are these cards sending to children or to our family members? This is supposed to be about expressing our love and affection and gratitude to each other. But as you say, so often actually the messages within them are actually quite sending out quite narrow, rigid ideas about things like gender, which I do think is quite harmful, actually. Well, I think that's the end of today's episode. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. We hope we haven't ruined your Christmas too much. But hopefully, I suppose Christmas may be ruined to some extent.
Yeah, it's ruined already, Stephen.
Because of the pandemic. But hopefully it's given us all something to reflect on, over the Christmas period. We hope you all have a lovely Christmas, whatever it is that you're doing over the holiday season. And we look forward to bringing you more episodes of Now and Men in the new year.
And just to finish off, we thought it would be worth recalling some fine words to parents from a Lego brochure in 1974, which we've seen going around the internet recently. And to quote from it, "The urge to create is equally strong in all children, boys and girls. It's the imagination that counts, not skill. You build whatever comes into your head, the way you want it. A bed or a truck, a doll's house or a spaceship. A lot of boys like doll's houses. They're more human than spaceships. A lot of girls prefer spaceships. They're more exciting than doll's houses. The most important thing is to put the right material in their hands and let them create whatever appeals to them."
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? It shows how things have changed, and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, 1974.
Yeah, wow. But it shows as well that things can change, how fast things can change in a positive way as well, potentially, if we work towards that. So don't forget that, of course, you can subscribe to Now and Men wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you are stuck for things to do over the holidays, you can listen back to the 8 previous episodes we've done on Now and Men if you haven't already done so.
And we always welcome feedback, questions, suggestions. So do get in touch with us at nowandmen@gmail.com if there's anything you'd like to share. But for now, goodbye and take care.
Thank you. Bye.